Well, I'm pretty sure you guys probably weren't expecting me to make this video, but, since it's been like a tradition for me to, review a Zelda game every 2 years, I thought now would be, the perfect time to do this. Also expect a Wind Waker review by, 2026. The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, the second and last game to be made for Nintendo 64. Now, how do you follow one of the most anticipated games of all time? Miyamoto and staff was like, I don't know, I guess do it again. Understandably, this game didn't have as much time in development since it only came out 2 years after its predecessor, Ocarina of Time, since that game took about 5 years to develop. The development team was led by Eiji Aonuma, Yoshiaki Kozuma, and Shigeru Miyamoto, mainly supervising. It was originally going to be a remixed version of Ocarina of Time called Year of Zelda that made all the dungeons harder, and was made for the Nintendo 64 CD add-on, which was a commercial failure and didn't release outside of Japan. So eventually, it was reworked as a Master Quest, which was packaged for pre-orders on Wind Waker for the GameCube. In between that time period, Miyamoto decided to give his team a challenge to make an entirely new Zelda game in about a year. So yeah, I don't know if that was him having a lot of faith in his team, they would still make a quality Zelda game in the short time span, or if he was just being a dick. This type of development cycle usually spells bad news for me because most games that were made in crunch time are usually hit or miss. Mostly misses, but I don't think that in this case it was really that bad since they used the same engine as Ocarina of Time with just updated textures, which saved them a lot of time. This was one of the 2 Nintendo 64 games to require the expansion pack to create higher quality texture graphics. They eventually decided they wanted to incorporate a day and night cycle, kind of like Ocarina of Time, but actually plays into the story, with time looping and everything. Kind of ironic how a game that was built around doing everything against the clock was developed by people who were working against the clock. And then when Majora's Mask was first shown off in May of 1999 during its Year of Zelda phase, when a Japanese magazine, Famitsu, reported that an Ocarina of Time expansion was in the works. In August 1999, the demo was shown off at Nintendo Space World, which would have a lot of the same elements that would appear in the final game, like the mask transformations and a timer at the bottom of the screen. Eventually, the final name would be revealed on March 2000 and would be set for a holiday release. Majora's Mask was released on April 27, 2000 in Japan and October 26 in North America. And while it sold well and got good reviews, it didn't really live up to the hype of its more popular predecessor. However, as the years go on, this game would gain a large cult following, praising the game seen as one of the greatest, if not the greatest Zelda game, being better than Ocarina of Time. So I did play Majora's Mask once back in 6th grade I think, and just like every other Zelda game that I would play at that point, I would drop the game because I kept on getting confused on where to go. And in the Ocarina of Time video, I did say that it gets better after the first hour, but I actually really didn't play it that much after the first hour though. I just heard how great the game gets after the first 3-day cycle. But now that I finished this game from start to finish, I think I can finally give you guys an authentic, actual, genuine opinion about this game. Taking place out the events of Ocarina of Time, Link is riding on Epona, looking for his friend who helped him out during Ocarina of Time, which is implied to be Navi, but it's never outright stated. While he's traversing through the woods, he gets ambushed by a kid wearing a skull mask and 2 fairies named Tattle and Tail. He steals Link's horse in Ocarina of Time and leaves Link for dead. Link chases after her but falls into a trap that turns him into a Deku Scrub. The kid in the mask leaves but accidentally leaves behind Tattle. Tattle apologizes to Link and offers to help him and change him back to normal, but since Link can't talk, he can't really tell her to fuck off, even if he wanted to. In his pursuit of the mask kid, he meets up with the Happy Mask salesman from Ocarina of Time. He tells Link that by getting the Ocarina back, he can return back to his normal self, but on the condition that he gets his mask back from this kid. They have to get it back quick too, because the Happy Mask salesman leaves in 3 days, and once you leave the clock tower, you immediately find out why. Because of the Skull Kid, the moon is falling and will crash into the land of Termina in 3 days, killing everybody in the process. Basically that one scene that Sonic Forces will copy, but instead of the sun, it's the moon. I don't know why, but when I started writing the script, I started thinking of the screaming sun from Rick and Morty when I saw this moon. Anyway, Link finds his way around Termina with no help of the townspeople, and is able to reach the Skull Kid with just minutes left on the clock, which is, whatever. The moon's falling down, it's gonna kill everybody, no big deal. Link and Tattle reach the Skull Kid, and Tail starts talking about 4 beings that are located near a swamp, the ocean, a mountain, and a canyon to help stop the moon from falling down. By shooting a large loogie at him, Link grabs the Ocarina of Time back from the Skull Kid, and gets flashbacks of learning the Song of the Time from Princess Zelda. However, they run out of time as the moon is crashing Termina. Right before that happens, Link plays the Song of Time, which calls aid to the goddess of time to reset the 3-day cycle. Link meets up with the Happy Mask salesman again, and he keeps his end of the bargain by changing Link back to his normal self once he gets the Ocarina of Time back from the Skull Kid. But Link didn't get the mask back from Skull Kid, which causes him to have a mental breakdown. Now that's actually very important because it was a mask that was used for hexing rituals, but whoever wears it gains dark powers, and since it's on this kid, that's going to be a massive problem. Now that Link's back to normal, it's up to him to grab the mask back from Skull Kid and stop the moon from crashing the Termina in the span of 3 days. Alright, so from here until the last day of the 3-day cycle, the game story just kind of takes a back seat. Like, you're still trying to find all the beans so Link can help like get Majora's Mask back, but this game, more than any other Zelda game before, has a bigger focus on characterization. Well, not that much for Link though, because he still doesn't really talk or emote that much, but I'm only talking more about the world of Termina. More than any Zelda game before it, this game has a bigger focus on world building. Termina is a very vast and varied world with lots of interesting characters. To really get the most out of Majora's Mask, you really gotta do a lot of the side quests to learn about the characters and the world of Termina. And while some people might think that's something the game has against it, personally, I feel like that's something it has going for it. I remember in the Ocarina of Time video, I said that a lot of the people that Link interacts with are pretty uninteresting. Flavor tests are just means to an end. In this game, everyone in Termina has a story, and they have a lot more to say than just bland banter. This game does a pretty good job in making me laugh with this dialogue and colorful cast of characters, but also makes me feel invested in the world of Termina and what happens to the people in this world. Like the side was Anju and Cafe. Well, that's probably not how you say it, but it looks like Cafe, so I'm just gonna say Cafe. So you gotta help these two get back together, and it gives me a warm feeling of comfort that these two are happy. I mean, the side quest itself could have been designed a lot better, but you know, I will get to that. There's also this one side quest where you get to Epona, but Romani's ranch isn't accessible until the final day. On that final day, you meet Romani, you see that something's up with her. Once you find a way to get in a ranch early in the cycle, we found out that aliens stole all the ranch's cows and left Romani mentally scarred. Once you fend off against the aliens, the ranch is saved and Romani's sister gets to make her first delivery in a long time. Majora's Mask draws a fine line between being heartwarming and funny with his dialogue to just being straight up creepy and unsettling. If you're not saying a warrior who lost their life, soul's arrest, then you're watching somebody just drop dead right in front of you, and it only gets worse and worse as the days go on, but at the same time, it really makes it even more satisfying when you help out the people in this world, making it feel like I made a difference here. Alright, let's get back to the main plot though. After completing all 4 dungeons and getting help from the 4 beings, Link confronts Skull Kid on the final day, and when Skull Kid tries to throw the moon down on Termina, Link summons the giants to hold the moon, rendering Skull Kid unconscious, but Majora becomes sentient and possesses the moon. Link goes into the moon and confronts Majora, and for some reason the inside of the moon looks like a Windows XP wallpaper, what the fuck. So then Link fights Majora and comes out the winner, saving Termina, and the Carnival of Time begins to celebrate Link's accomplishments, and Skull Kid thanks him for saving him, and the game ends with Link resuming his search for Navi. Like I said, Majora's Mask is more focused on the world of Termina rather than the overarching plot. Now, while I can appreciate that my issues with Ocarina of Time story were fixed here, I would rather have a good balance between the two. I would like to have a really good story with really good characters to complement it, but I wouldn't have been praising this game's characterization for the last 5 minutes if I didn't like it. I already talked about the townspeople in Termina, but I really like Majora as a villain, even though he doesn't make a physical appearance until the end of the game. You really feel his presence throughout the game in a way that Ganondorf's presence in Ocarina of Time wasn't. In the 4 areas, the civilians were feeling the effects of the moon crashing down. In the snowy mountains, the Gorons were freezing to death, and the Zoras are dying because the water's going bad. The Majora is feeling eggs for them too. The fact that the people in this world are feeling the effects of Majora's action makes him pretty imposing. If the massive dark earth from Slide 3 was more like this, then I feel like it would make him a better villain. No Zelda game I played before has gotten me this invested in the world and the characters inside that world. This game actually makes me feel a lot of emotions because of the villagers here, and see that all my hard work made all the people of Termina happier makes me feel like I actually did something to contribute to it. Out of all the Zelda games I played, this has to be my favorite story. I'm not sure why Zelda's name is in the title since she only shows up once and even that's in the flashback, but you know, brand recognition. Alright, so this game basically expands on what Ocarina of Time brought to the table. Since this game was made on the same engine as Ocarina of Time, a lot of the assets and the character models were used, but to be completely honest, between the 2 games, Majora's Mask was a lot better than Ocarina of Time in my opinion. Thanks to the expansion pack, it allows the game to have better looking textures and better draw distance. Majora's Mask is a really pretty game even for N64 standards. All the places you travel to have so many different colors, and none of them look the same. There's a lot of townspeople to talk to, who not only offer you side quests to do, but also have pretty funny dialogue. And thanks to the music, a lot of areas in this game pack a lot of ambience, which I already thought Ocarina of Time did pretty well. The music in this game does a great job in creating the atmosphere in the areas, like the clock town is happy and upbeat, and the temple sounds mysterious. Anyway, the graphics and accents aren't the only thing that Majora's Mask borrowed from Ocarina of Time. Link controls the exact same as he did in Ocarina of Time. He can swing his sword, block with his shield, lock on the enemies, and use a bunch of items. Since Link put the Master Sword back in his pedestal in the last game, he can't transform into his adult self. A lot of the typical Zelda items come back, like the bow and arrow and bottle. Even the hookshot comes back here too. The new big items that this game has are the mask. A lot of them can be acquired from doing side quests, and there's a lot of them, exactly 24, but I should recommend you try to get all these, because they make traveling through Termina and blending through these dungeons a lot easier. Like the bunny hood makes you run a lot faster, and while this isn't really a replacement for the Pegasus boost in A Link to the Past, the bunny hood is still pretty good in its own way, because you can move through Termina faster. I also really like the Bomb Blast mask, because it removes the need for regular bombs. I don't really know about the snow mask because apparently it's supposed to make you invisible to people around you, but I'm not sure if it really works because when you try to sneak into the Geurdo fortress, they start looking at you wondering, what the fuck is this kid doing? 4 of them can see through the mask, so... The plot important masks are the Deku Mask, the Goron Mask, and the Zora Mask. The Deku Mask is something that's automatically given to Link after you change back to his normal form, and you give it on the mask to go back to his Deku form whenever he wants. While he's in his Deku form, he can skip on water for a few seconds, do his best Bandicoot impression, and he can use the Deku flowers to reach higher areas. Then there's the Goron Mask, which you get from playing the song of healing to a warrior named Darmani who died in combat. This mask makes Link a big Goron who's pretty slow but can't jump, that makes up for it for his combat skills and his rolling maneuver, which lets you reach really high speeds, give you another way to traverse the Termina faster. You get to ride upon them when you toss a Romani, but rolling around and using the bunny hood is so much more fun. Finally, there's Zora Mask, which Link obtains from watching Zora drop dead. This mask makes Link taller and paler and a better swimmer too, which means you don't have to worry about switching from your regular boots to your iron boots every 5 seconds, and he gets a shield underwater too. All these masks actually really add on to the gameplay and make it really fun since Link has more abilities in his arsenal, and it makes you think about how you want to handle the objectives in this game. Speaking of objectives, Termina is a lot different from Hyrule and Ocarina of Time. Because of the events of the story, time is always ticking, whether you're in Termina or inside castles. Once you reach the end of the 3-day cycle, the moon comes crashing down, destroying the Termina in the process. Now, just because it says 3 days doesn't mean it's actually 3 days. 3 days in Nintendo terminology is 54 minutes, which divided by 3 is 18 minutes, meaning you only have a little under an hour to complete all the dungeons and free all the beings and stop the moon from crashing to Termina, if you don't know how to use the Ocarina of Time. In Ocarina of Time, the instrument was used for playing songs for NPCs for art pieces, or to work to other points in the map. In this game, it's pretty much essential to beat the game. You can learn songs like the Song of Time, which restarts the cycle, the Song of Sword, which teleports you to certain points in the map thanks to these falcon statues, which also save the game, which is cool and everything, but I didn't know you can do that, leading me to spend like 10 minutes in the option menu wondering how to save. The Song of Double Time, which fast forwards to another point in time, and Inverted Song of Time, which doubles the amount of time you have, which takes a lot of stress off the player. Restarting the 3-day cycle also resets side quests, and you lose items like bombs, sticks, and rupees and arrows. But the same doesn't apply for the master you attain or any of the plot important items. I would see this as a problem if it wasn't so easy to get bombs and arrows around Termina. It's also really easy to get rupees in this game, from either slicing up bushes or opening up chests that contains large sums of rupees. There's this one chest that's located on the rooftops, and you can probably just farm rupees by just resetting the cycle and opening that chest over and over again. There's a bank where you can deposit all your rupees that you earn throughout your adventures, and all your money's still there even if you reset the 3-day cycle. I guess Link can join Yoshi in the Tax Fraud Club. Termina is also structured a lot different than Hyrule. It's a lot more condensed and nowhere near as spacious. All the areas are really close to each other and don't take long to navigate either, since you can walk into the swamp and then walk out of the swamp and then make a 90-degree turn into the snow mountains. And it's even faster when you just use the Song of Sword to get to places quicker. Personally, as someone who didn't really like how Hyrule Field was designed in Ocarina of Time, this is a serious upgrade because it doesn't take a long time to get to one place to another, especially with the bunny hood and the Goron Mask in Link's bag. Now, since Majora's Mask has the least amount of dungeons in the main Zelda game, only 4 dungeons, you can beat the game in about 7 to 8 hours if you focus on the main story, but if you play the game like that, you'll probably miss out on like, maybe 80% of the game. Majora's Mask is heavily focused on the side quests, not only to get to know the people of Termina and solving their problems, but also to survive what this game throws at you. You don't really get a full heart container after you complete a dungeon in a Zelda game, but since this game only has 4 dungeons, you'll only have 7 hearts if you decide to do a casual playthrough. So you have to collect heart pieces, and thankfully there's a lot of them, with 52 being in the game. I don't mind doing side quests for heart pieces and masks, but some of them can be annoying. Yes, I'm talking about the Angeon Cafe side quest. None of these side quests are at the same level as the Goron Sword Trade and Ocarina of Time, but this one comes very close though. This quest takes you an entire 3-day cycle, and if you fuck up at any point of the quest, you have to do it all over again. And you have to do it twice if you want the heart piece. Then there's the fact that some side quests require you to be at a certain place at a certain time, and if you don't feel like doing other stuff before that time comes, you'll probably just be standing idly waiting for that time to come. Well, at least I can do other stuff while I wait, like checking my Discord messages. I also don't like the shooting gallery that you can do to get arrow upgrades. The controls for a bow and arrow are very sensitive, it makes it really hard to be precise, especially when I have to perfectly shoot all the targets. No thanks, I'm good. Well, this game will have you occasionally going back and forth but while doing side quests, but it's nowhere near as bad as it is in Ocarina of Time. But even then, you can always use the Ocarina of Time to make traveling to places faster, so I'm not as bothered by this as most people probably would be. Finally, I think it's time we talk about the temples in this game. Even though there's only 4 of them, this game might have the best designed dungeons and puzzles in the series. All the dungeons in this game are really fun, and combined with the time limit, they feel pretty rewarding to complete. The Woodfall Temple is a pretty good first level. If It shows you how to use your mask powers to solve puzzles and forces you to learn how to use your regular items to get throughout the dungeon. This dungeon is a lot more brain taxing than any of the first 3 dungeons in the Ocarina of Time. The boss fight Odalo is a pretty good first boss. Not too hard, but not too easy at the same time. Also sounds like he's chanting "want to die." Then we got the Snowhead Temple, which kind of reminds you of the Ice Palace from A Link to the Past, but nowhere near as annoying. Sure, you still gotta deal with ice physics, but you can transform into the Gorons to make it so you don't slip on any ice. Plus, there isn't a stupid ass puzzle where you have to loop a bunch of rooms to press one switch. There's still a lot of floors though. The boss in this temple, Go, is pretty fun, beating him with the Majoras Mask, but can be a little bit annoying with all the stuff that he throws at you. The Great Bay Temple, I heard so much bad stuff about this from both friends and from reviewers, saying that it's just as bad as the Water Temple, and I really have a lot of good first impressions with this temple because of all the stuff that raises and lowers the waters, but honestly, playing through the whole thing, I actually thought it was pretty fun. I thought this temple was actually really well designed and I like solving the puzzles in this dungeon. Even with raising and lowering the water, it's nowhere near as annoying as the Water Temple because you don't have to constantly switch into your iron boots every time you go underwater. You can use the Majoras Mask to swim faster from one place to another. This dungeon's layout can be a little bit confusing, so I would recommend using a walkthrough or a guide if it's your first time, but for what it is, this is a huge step up from the Water Temple. Well, if you know what you're doing. If you don't, then Water Temple Part 2. The boss is a giant fish named George, or Geurdo. It's a fun fight. I like switching from the Majoras Mask to do damage to him. Then there's the last temple, the Stone Tower Temple, which ended up being my least favorite one in the game. To start, just getting here is a pain in the ass because these Gobos that are blocking the gates, and you need to give them items to get past, and if you don't have the correct items, you'll have to go back and forth to get the stuff that you need. And you need to talk to them in specific orders, so if you're talking to the wrong Gobos, you run up in the wrong place real fast. Then you have to play the Elegy of Emptiness to make clones of each mask, so you press the switches to open up each door. First of all, the clones look like this, what the fuck?
You think this is funny?
In a cosmic sort of way, yes.
Well, Mr. Funny Man, is this how you get your sick kicks?
What? It's just an ordinary crabby. Oh my goodness! Squidward!
This temple is also the longest one in the game, and combined with the time limit, I recommend you use a guide for your first time for this one too. In all 4 of these dungeons, there's 15 stray fairies scattered all over the temple. You can get these to the fairy gods to either give you an upgrade or increase your power meter. I never got all of them. They require a lot of backtracking to get them all. Especially in the Stone Tower Temple, being as big as it is. All these upgrades are good and everything, but I don't know the optimal way of completing these dungeons and grabbing the fairies all at the same time. But that's the only problem I have with these dungeons, because other than the Stone Tower Temple, it's a lot of fun figuring out these puzzles in these dungeons more than any dungeon in any Zelda game that I played before. Whenever I find the boss key in a dungeon, I get this weird feeling that I didn't get enough about these dungeons before I find the boss, like I'm nearing the end way too quickly, which I can only assume that it means I really enjoy the design of the dungeons here. Although the boss fight in the Stone Tower Temple isn't a lot to write home though, this boss is really a joke. But it doesn't get any weirder than the final boss against Majora. This dude is weird, crazy, surreal, and creepy, which is fitting given the themes of this game. This boss is pretty imposing and climactic, except if you wear the Fierce Deity Mask. It's kind of a joke if you have that on. But without it, it can be pretty difficult, and this dude is batshit insane. At first he starts off relatively normal, but then the second phase starts where he just starts running around like a bunch of kids at a birthday party. He starts moonwalking and even does a Cossack dance. Then there's the final form where you gotta shoot the light arrows at him to finish off the boss. Also, a really amazing boss to end off of a really amazing game. But before we end things off, let's talk about Majora's Mask 3D, the Nintendo 3DS remake that came out in 2015, about 4 years after Ocarina of Time 3D. It's basically just the same game but with quality of life improvements like high quality graphics and textures, improved controls for the target practice minigames. The notebook now tracks the progress of the NPC schedule so you don't have to constantly pause the game. You can now save anywhere you want instead of just only be able to save with the owl statues. And the boss fight have more obvious weak points to make it more easy to defeat them. So if you played Majora's Mask before but couldn't get into it because it's not like the traditional Zelda experience, then pick this up since it makes the game more accessible to newcomers. Kinda wish that wasn't just on the 3DS. Like, don't get me wrong, I love the 3DS and everything, and realistically, it was a better choice given the Wii U's failed status, but I would've loved to see these nice looking textures on my TV. Maybe we could get Majora's Mask HD. We got Skyward Sword HD a couple years back, so it's not impossible. So yeah, this game is honestly the best Zelda experience I've had. This game really feels like Ocarina of Time, but just better. I still think that Ocarina of Time is a good game and it's probably more accessible to new players in comparison to this game because of the time limit and bigger focus on side quests. But for the overall experience, I see myself coming back to this game more than most Zelda games I've played. My personal favorite Zelda is still A Link to the Past just because it was the first Zelda game that I ever completed. And I also have a soft spot for my first experience. Wait, that kind of sounds weird. I have a soft spot for the first one that I ever beaten. Yeah, that sounds better. And honestly, when it comes to the core gameplay, I always go to that game whenever I'm itching to get my Zelda fix. But when it comes to the story, the character, and the world building, Majora's Mask easily trumps it. Even though I still prefer A Link to the Past, Majora's Mask is still a close second though. I hear people calling this game their favorite Zelda game and even their favorite video game of all time. And even though I personally wouldn't go that far, I can honestly say that this is my favorite 3D Zelda game. It feels like any problem I had with Ocarina of Time was either removed or fixed. Termina is so much fun to travel through, the dungeons are probably the best design in the series, the characters and story are really interesting. The master transformations make things so much fun, and even like this doing the side quests to help people out in this world. Sure, my overall playtime didn't end up being longer than Ocarina of Time, but unlike that game, that was my choice and not because how the game was structured. And to me, if I'm spending a longer than normal time in your game because I want to, and not because of how the game is structured, then to me that means you're doing something right. The game is long, but it never really feels like it's dragging it on. I'd love to see a game that's like or even structured like Majora's Mask, but seeing the direction the series is taking right now, I don't really see that happening for a while. But I'm perfectly fine with that, and I have no problem replaying this game in the meantime. And that's gonna be right for 2024. I originally wanted to end this year off with the Epic Mickey remake, but I don't think I have enough time to make that video. But hey, there's already next year, so yeah, I really want to thank you guys for all the support throughout the year. I managed to break over 500 subscribers this year, which I know doesn't sound that impressive, but it's still progression. And it's really great to see you all always just commenting and sharing the videos, whether you guys are new or just returning subscribers who've been here since the dawn time. And I kind of feel a little bit bad because I haven't really been that consistent this year, and which kind of weird saying that since I barely uploaded last year. And that's kind of why my subscriber growth has been so slow these past couple of years. But I'm so grateful for you all who've been sticking around. But yeah, I really don't want to say I have a lot of stuff planned for next year, because last time I said that my laptop just fucked up and died, and I wasn't able to upload for 9 months. But fingers crossed that won't happen this time. So yeah, with all that being said, thank you guys for watching. Have a happy New Year's, and I'll see you all next time. Peace.